My friend stole my wife and now wants to be friends again. What should I do? Hey everyone, I never thought I'd be posting something like this, but here I am. My name's Dave, and my life recently took a turn I never saw coming. I've been married to Laura for 7 years, and we have a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. I'm a 35-year-old software developer, and Laura's a graphic designer. We met in college, hit it off immediately, and it seemed like we were destined to be together. For the most part, things were good. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing too dramatic. We had a pretty tight-knit group of friends, and one of my closest buddies, Tom, was always around. Tom and I have known each other since high school. He's been my wingman through a lot of life's crap. We shared a lot, including the occasional late-night rant about relationships and life. I never thought anything could come between us, until recently. A few months ago, I started noticing some strange behavior from Laura. She was coming home late from work, claiming it was extra hours at the office. Her phone was always glued to her hand, and she seemed distant. At first, I chalked it up to work stress or maybe just a phase. But then, things started to feel off. One night, I came home early from a work event and decided to surprise Laura with dinner. When I walked into the house, I heard voices coming from the bedroom. My heart sank as I recognized Tom's voice. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just a work thing or something. But when I walked into the bedroom, the scene before me was something I can't quite forget. Laura and Tom were in bed together, wrapped up in each other's arms. The world seemed to slow down. My first instinct was shock, then anger. I stood there, frozen, not quite believing what I was seeing. Laura's eyes widened, and Tom looked like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't know what to do or say at that moment. My mind was racing, my emotions were all over the place. The image of Laura and Tom together replayed in my mind over and over as I stumbled out of the room. I could barely comprehend what I had just witnessed. My heart was pounding, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I stumbled into the living room, trying to catch my breath and process what had just happened. Laura came out of the bedroom, her face pale and her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and panic. Tom, on the other hand, quickly dressed and tried to make a hasty exit, but not before giving me a look that I can only describe as a mix of shame and defiance. He muttered something about needing to explain himself, but I was too overwhelmed to even listen. Laura tried to talk to me, but I could barely hear her over the sound of my own heartache. She said it was a mistake, that it just happened, and that she was sorry. The typical lines you hear in situations like these, but it didn't make the situation any easier to digest. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I wanted to understand why this happened, and why Tom, my friend, would betray me like this. I tried to piece together what had led to this moment. It wasn't just that night. There were small signs leading up to it. Laura's late nights, her sudden need for privacy, her reluctance to share details about her day. All those little changes that seemed innocuous at the time suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. I spent the night at a friend's place, not wanting to stay in the house where I'd just witnessed such a painful betrayal. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. I needed space to think, but the pain was overwhelming. The next day, I reached out to Tom to get some answers. He agreed to meet me, and I was filled with a mix of dread and anger as I prepared for the conversation that would follow. I met Tom at a coffee shop the next morning. It was a place we'd often hung out at, but today, it felt like a battleground. Tom was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. As soon as I saw him, the anger I'd been holding back boiled over. I barely managed to keep my voice steady as I approached. "Hey, Tom," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I think we need to talk." He looked up at me, his face a mask of discomfort and regret. "Dave, I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't know how to—" "How to what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "How to explain why you're in bed with my wife. I want to know what's going on. Why did this happen?" Tom took a deep breath and looked down at his coffee cup, as if searching for the right words. "Laura and we've been seeing each other for a few months now. It started as a friendship, but things got complicated. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I was stunned. "A few months? So this wasn't a one-time thing? You've been sneaking around behind my back for months?" Tom nodded, looking utterly defeated. "I didn't know how to stop it. I know it's messed up. I never wanted to hurt you, Dave. I thought maybe it was just a phase, or that things would get better." "Get better?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This isn't something that just gets better. You've been lying to me, to Laura, to everyone. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. I know. I'm really sorry. I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how to face you. I've messed up everything. As much as I wanted to lash out, part of me was numb, trying to process the enormity of what Tom had done. I felt betrayed by someone I'd considered family. I needed answers, but I also needed to know what to do next. Tom's apologies and explanations felt hollow against the reality of the situation. I left the coffee shop with a heavy heart, feeling like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. I needed to confront Laura next, but I was dreading the conversation. I had questions that needed answers, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what she might say. Confronting Tom was hard, but facing Laura was even tougher. After our meeting, I spent the day in a daze, trying to process everything. By the time I got back to the house, it felt like an alien space. My home, but not mine anymore. Laura was already home, sitting on the couch with a tense, uncertain look on her face. I could see the stress and remorse in her eyes, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Laura, I said, my voice shaking. We need to talk. She nodded, her face pale and her hands trembling slightly. We sat down in the living room, a place that once felt cozy and safe, but now felt like a cold, uncomfortable stage for our painful conversation. I spoke to Tom today, I began, trying to steady my breath. He confirmed everything. You two have been seeing each other for months. Laura's eyes filled with tears, and she tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Dave, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It started with us talking, and then things just got out of hand. I know it's no excuse. Out of hand? I echoed, struggling to keep my emotions in check. This isn't just something that got out of hand. You betrayed me. You were my partner, my confidant. How could you do this? Laura's tears flowed freely now. I made a terrible mistake. I thought I was unhappy, and Tom was there for me in a way I didn't realize I needed. It was wrong. I know that now. Her words stung, and the pain of her betrayal cut deep. I felt like my whole world had been shattered. The trust I had in her, the life we had built together, felt like it had been stolen from me. The person I thought I knew so well was suddenly a stranger. Do you love him? I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Laura hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. I don't know. I care about him, but I don't know if it's love. I was confused, and I made awful choices. Her uncertainty about her feelings only made things worse. It felt like she was saying everything she thought I needed to hear rather than what was truly in her heart. The emotional impact of the situation was overwhelming. I felt a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I needed to make sense of this emotional chaos, to find some clarity amidst the storm. But for now, all I could do was sit there, trying to hold back tears and grapple with the reality of my crumbling relationship. The days following our confrontation were a blur. I spent most of my time wrestling with a storm of emotions: anger, confusion, sadness. The house felt like a battlefield, each room a reminder of what had been lost. Laura and I barely spoke, the silence between us thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I sought advice from friends and family, trying to find some semblance of direction. Everyone had different opinions, but the common thread was that I needed to make a decision about our future. I was torn between wanting to salvage what was left of our relationship and the overwhelming urge to walk away from the pain and betrayal. One night, I decided to take a long walk to clear my head. As I walked through the quiet streets, I thought about what I wanted. Did I still love Laura? Or was I holding on to the idea of our relationship rather than the reality? Did I want to fight for what we had? Or was it time to move on? When I got back home, I knew I needed to talk to Laura again. We sat down, and I took a deep breath before speaking. Laura, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I'm struggling with how to move forward. I need to know if you're willing to work on this with me, or if we should go our separate ways. Laura looked up, her eyes red from crying. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. I know I've made a terrible mistake, and I want to rebuild our trust. I love you, Dave. I know it will be hard, but I want to try. Her words were heartfelt, but the reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Rebuilding trust after such a betrayal seemed like an insurmountable task. I needed time to think, to decide if this was something I could even consider. After several days of soul-searching, I made a decision. I chose to separate from Laura for a while. I felt that we both needed space to reflect on our lives and what we wanted. It wasn't an easy choice, and it didn't come without its own set of emotional challenges. But I needed to step away from the situation to see if there was a path forward or if it was time to let go. The separation was painful, but it gave us both the opportunity to assess our feelings and consider our next steps. I hoped that with time, we could find clarity and maybe even a way to rebuild. If not, at least we'd have the chance to start healing and moving on from the pain. The separation was tough, no doubt. The house felt emptier, quieter, and I struggled with the loneliness that came with it. I moved into a small apartment, trying to find a new routine and a sense of normalcy. The initial days were filled with a mix of relief and grief. I was relieved to have space from the constant reminders of Laura's betrayal, but I also missed the life we had shared. During this time, I threw myself into work and tried to reconnect with old friends. I also began attending therapy sessions to help process the emotional fallout and gain perspective. It was a slow and often painful journey, but it helped me start to piece together my thoughts and feelings. Laura and I communicated sporadically, primarily through text or brief phone calls. Each conversation was a mix of awkwardness and tentative hope. We both knew that the road ahead was uncertain, but there was a shared desire to understand if we could ever come back from this. Laura was seeing a therapist as well, trying to work through her own issues and the mistakes she'd made. I began to notice some positive changes in both of us. Laura was making an effort to address the underlying issues that led to the affair. She was more open about her feelings and actively working on rebuilding her sense of self. I could see that she was genuinely remorseful and committed to making things right. I also started to think about what I wanted in the future. I realized that rebuilding trust would be a long and difficult process, but it wasn't entirely out of the question. I had to consider if I could forgive Laura and if we could create a new foundation for our relationship. I also had to evaluate whether I was ready to put in the effort required to rebuild that trust. As the weeks turned into months, I began to see small but significant changes in Laura and in myself. We started to meet more frequently, discussing our feelings and the possibility of reconciliation. These meetings were often emotionally charged, but they were also a chance for us to communicate openly and honestly. The process of reflection and rebuilding was far from easy, but it was necessary. We both needed to address our past mistakes and understand if there was a way forward. The future was still uncertain, but we were taking it one step at a time, hoping that, with patience and effort, we might be able to find a path back to each other, or at least come to terms with the reality of our situation. Just when I thought things were starting to settle into a routine, life threw another curveball my way. I was at work, buried in a project that had me swamped, when I received a phone call from Laura. Her voice was trembling, and there was a sense of urgency in her tone. "Dave, I need to talk to you. Something's happened," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced as I agreed to meet her at a nearby park. I couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation was going to bring more complications into our already tumultuous situation. When I arrived at the park, Laura was sitting on a bench, her face pale and her eyes red. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I took a seat next to her, trying to mask my growing concern. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Laura took a deep breath before speaking. "Tom, he reached out to me. He said he's moving away, somewhere far, like a different state. He wants to see me one last time before he leaves." I stared at her, confused and a bit taken aback. "Why are you telling me this now?" Laura's eyes were filled with tears. "I don't know what to do. Part of me wants closure, but I also feel like it's going to make everything more complicated. I don't want to hurt you more, but I feel like I need to address this before he leaves." Her words hit me hard. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted again. The idea of Tom leaving was unexpected, and it added a new layer of complexity to our situation. I thought about the possibility of Laura meeting with Tom and how it might affect our fragile progress. "I think you should do what you feel is necessary for your own closure," I said finally. "But you need to be honest with me about everything. If you're going to meet him, we need to talk about it openly." Laura nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and anxiety. "I will. I just didn't want to keep anything from you." We agreed that she would meet with Tom, and then we would talk about it afterward. As I walked away from the park, I felt a strange mix of apprehension and hope. The unexpected twist was a reminder that our journey was far from over. There were still unresolved issues and emotions to work through. I hoped that this meeting would bring the closure Laura needed, but I couldn't shake the worry that it might stir up more complications. The road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew we had to face whatever came next with honesty and courage. Laura's meeting with Tom took place a few days later. We had agreed to talk immediately afterward, so I was on edge, waiting for her to return. My mind was filled with questions. What would she say? How would it affect us? I tried to stay busy with work, but it was impossible to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. When Laura finally came back, she looked exhausted, but somewhat relieved. We sat down in the living room and she took a deep breath before speaking. Tom and I met at a small cafe. It was intense, Laura began, her voice wavering. We talked about everything, our feelings, the affair, what went wrong. It was emotional and painful, but I think it was important for both of us. I listened intently, trying to absorb her words. What did Tom say? What were his reasons for everything? Laura's eyes filled with tears again. He said he was sorry and that he was leaving to escape the mess he'd created. He told me he was still in love with me, but he realized that he needed to move on and give us space. He said he hoped I could forgive him eventually, but he understood if I couldn't. I took in her words, feeling a wave of mixed emotions. On one hand, I was relieved that Laura had closure with Tom. On the other hand, it was difficult to hear that Tom still had lingering feelings for her. It felt like another complication in an already tangled situation. And what about us? I asked quietly. What do you want now? Laura looked at me with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. I want to work on us. I know it won't be easy, but I'm committed to rebuilding our relationship. I've realized how much I've hurt you, and I want to make things right. Her words were sincere, but I still had doubts. The pain of the betrayal was fresh, and the journey of rebuilding trust seemed daunting. I needed to decide if I could truly forgive Laura and if we could create a new path forward together. I appreciate your honesty, Laura, I said after a moment of silence. But I need more time to process everything. I want to believe that we can move past this, but it's going to take a lot of effort and understanding from both of us. Laura nodded, understanding the gravity of my response. I'll give you the space you need. I just want you to know that I'm here and willing to work through this, no matter how long it takes. As she left the room, I sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened. The path forward was uncertain, but at least we had taken a step toward understanding each other's needs and feelings. The future remained unclear, but we were both committed to trying to heal and rebuild, one step at a time. The weeks following Laura's meeting with Tom were a time of intense emotional work for both of us. We were navigating the treacherous waters of rebuilding trust, and it wasn't easy. I tried to approach it with an open mind, but the pain of the betrayal was still fresh. We started with small steps, more open communication, setting boundaries, and attending couples therapy. Our sessions were a mix of breakthroughs and setbacks. The therapist guided us through exercises to help us understand each other's needs and feelings. And while it was uncomfortable, it was also a necessary part of the healing process. One major challenge was dealing with the lingering feelings of mistrust. I would sometimes catch myself doubting Laura's words or second-guessing her actions. She was understanding, but also frustrated with the constant scrutiny. It was clear that rebuilding trust would be a gradual process, requiring patience from both of us. I also made an effort to focus on self-care and personal growth. I started exercising more, picked up a few new hobbies, and worked on improving my own mental health. I realized that in order to move forward, I needed to be in a better place emotionally and physically. Laura was making genuine efforts to reconnect with me and show her commitment. She was more transparent about her daily activities and made an effort to be more present in our interactions. It was clear that she was working hard to address the issues that led to the affair and to rebuild the trust that had been broken. Despite the positive changes, there were still moments of doubt and tension. We had disagreements about various issues, and the emotional baggage from the affair would occasionally resurface. But we both acknowledged that these were part of the process and that facing them head-on was crucial for our healing. One significant breakthrough came when we started to have more honest and open conversations about our feelings and expectations. Laura shared her fears and regrets, and I began to understand the depth of her remorse. It wasn't an easy process, but it was a step toward rebuilding the connection we had once shared. It was clear that we were both invested in making our relationship work, but we also knew that it would take time and continuous effort. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were committed to taking it one day at a time, hoping that with patience and understanding, we could find a way to move forward together. After a few months of therapy and honest communication, I started to notice some positive changes in our relationship. The process of rebuilding trust was ongoing, but there were moments that hinted at the possibility of healing. We had established some new routines and habits that were helping us reconnect in meaningful ways. One of the first signs of progress was how we were handling conflicts. Instead of letting arguments spiral out of control, we were learning to address issues calmly and constructively. It wasn't always easy, and there were still times when emotions ran high, but we were making an effort to listen to each other and find solutions together. We also started to engage in activities that we both enjoyed. We revisited some of the hobbies and interests that had brought us joy earlier in our relationship. We went hiking on weekends, cooked meals together, and even started a new project at home. These activities helped us reconnect on a deeper level and reminded us of the positive aspects of our relationship. One particular weekend, we took a trip to a nearby lake. It was a simple getaway, but it provided a much-needed break from the daily grind. We spent time talking, reminiscing, and enjoying each other's company. The trip wasn't about solving all our problems, but it was a chance to create new, positive memories together. During this period, I also made a conscious effort to appreciate Laura's efforts and show gratitude for the positive changes she was making. Acknowledging her commitment and expressing my own willingness to work on the relationship helped to reinforce our bond. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but rather about finding a way to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the progress, there were still moments of doubt and insecurity. The shadow of the past occasionally loomed over us, and it was clear that fully restoring trust would take time. However, the small victories and positive moments were encouraging. They reminded us that, while the road ahead was still challenging, we were making strides in the right direction. As we continued on this path, we both realized that rebuilding our relationship was not just about fixing what had been broken, but also about growing together and creating a stronger, more resilient partnership. It was a journey of rediscovery, learning to appreciate each other's strengths and working through our weaknesses. The progress we made was a testament to our commitment to each other and to the future of our relationship. We knew that there would be more obstacles along the way, but for the first time in a long while, there was a sense of hope and optimism about what lay ahead. Just when things seemed to be on the upswing, we hit a bump in the road. It happened during a seemingly normal day. Laura came home late from work, and I found myself slipping back into old habits of suspicion and doubt. It was as if the progress we'd made was suddenly overshadowed by a wave of insecurity. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but the old feelings of betrayal were resurfacing. I questioned Laura about her late hours and her phone conversations, even though I knew deep down that these were signs of my own insecurities rather than actual issues. Laura noticed my change in attitude and became visibly upset. She had been working hard to rebuild trust and had been transparent about her activities. Seeing me revert to mistrustful behavior was disheartening for her and undermined the progress we had made. We had a tense discussion that evening. Laura expressed her frustration and hurt, and I could see how my actions were affecting her. I realized that I needed to address my own feelings and work through my insecurities rather than taking them out on Laura. Our therapist helped us navigate this difficult moment. We discussed the triggers for my doubts and the importance of managing them constructively. It was a reminder that rebuilding trust wasn't a linear process, but rather a series of steps forward and backward. Laura was understanding, but also made it clear that she needed reassurance that I was committed to working on these issues. We both agreed that we needed to address these relapses head-on and find ways to prevent them from derailing our progress. To cope with these setbacks, we implemented new strategies. We started having regular check-ins where we could discuss our feelings and concerns openly. We also set aside time for individual therapy to help manage personal insecurities and emotional triggers. The relapses were tough, but they were also a part of our healing journey. They taught us the importance of perseverance and the need to be proactive in addressing issues as they arose. While it was disheartening to face these setbacks, they also reinforced our commitment to each other and to the process of rebuilding. Despite the challenges, we continued to work through our issues with determination. The setbacks were reminders that healing was an ongoing process, but each step, no matter how small, brought us closer to understanding and strengthening our relationship. As we continued to navigate the ups and downs of rebuilding our relationship, we began to develop a deeper understanding of each other. The setbacks we faced, though difficult, eventually led to important insights and growth. One evening, after a particularly tough day, Laura and I had a heart-to-heart conversation that marked a turning point. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, and the peaceful setting provided a rare moment of calm. We began talking about our hopes and fears, and for the first time in a while, the conversation didn't feel like a battle. Laura shared her own struggles with guilt and self-doubt. She talked about the weight she carried from the affair and her fears about whether we could ever truly move past it. Her vulnerability was both touching and revealing. I realized that her journey was as complex and challenging as mine. I've been so focused on my own pain and mistrust that I haven't really considered how hard this has been for you, I admitted. I know I've made mistakes, but I see now that you're carrying a lot of emotional baggage too. Laura nodded, tears in her eyes. I've been trying so hard to make things right, but sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough. I want us to heal, but I also feel like I'm constantly fighting against my own mistakes. Our conversation opened a new level of empathy between us. We both acknowledged that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken, but about understanding and supporting each other through our individual struggles. It was clear that our journey required not only forgiveness, but also a renewed commitment to mutual growth and understanding. In the weeks that followed, we made a concerted effort to strengthen our emotional connection. We began to focus more on each other's needs and well-being, rather than just our own. We started setting aside dedicated time for activities that fostered intimacy and connection, such as cooking together, taking walks, and planning small getaways. We also began to celebrate the small victories and progress we made, rather than just focusing on the setbacks. Acknowledging these moments helped us stay motivated and reminded us of the positive strides we were making. The new understanding between us was a crucial step in our healing process. It allowed us to approach our relationship with a fresh perspective, emphasizing empathy, communication, and shared growth. While the journey was still far from over, this new level of understanding gave us hope that, despite the challenges, we could continue to build a stronger, more resilient relationship. We knew that there would be more obstacles to face, but we were learning to approach them with a renewed sense of partnership and support. The road ahead remained uncertain, but with each step, we were building a foundation that, we hoped, could lead to a more fulfilling and lasting connection. Despite the progress we had made, there were still moments of doubt and uncertainty. It felt like every step forward was accompanied by a fear of falling backward. We both grappled with these feelings, but we were determined to face them together. One day, as we were preparing dinner, Laura received a call from an unknown number. She answered it, but I couldn't help but notice the way her expression changed, nervous and guarded. After she hung up, I felt a familiar pang of anxiety. I knew I had to confront these feelings, but it was hard not to let them spiral into mistrust. I decided to address it directly, choosing a calm moment later that evening. Laura, I noticed that phone call today. I don't want to intrude, but it brought up some old fears. Can we talk about it? Laura's face flushed with guilt. It was just a call from a telemarketer. I didn't mean to make it seem like it was something more. I should have told you right away. Her response was reassuring, but it also highlighted how fragile our progress was. We had worked so hard to rebuild trust, yet even small, innocuous situations could trigger doubts. It became clear that we needed to continue working on our communication and transparency to prevent misunderstandings from escalating. To address these issues, we implemented new strategies to manage our insecurities. We agreed to be more open about our interactions and any potential triggers that could cause anxiety. We also committed to regular check-ins to discuss our feelings and reassure each other. One of the most impactful changes was setting aside relationship time each week, an opportunity for us to focus solely on each other without distractions. These moments became a sanctuary where we could reconnect and reaffirm our commitment to each other. They provided a sense of stability and helped us navigate the ongoing challenges. In addition to these efforts, we also sought ways to renew our bond through shared experiences. We began exploring new activities together, such as taking dance classes and planning spontaneous adventures. These experiences helped us create positive memories and reinforce the joy and excitement in our relationship. Despite the moments of doubt and anxiety, there were also moments of deep connection and renewal. We found solace in knowing that we were committed to working through our issues together. Each small victory, each act of understanding and reassurance contributed to a growing sense of hope. The path forward was still uncertain, but we were learning to embrace the journey with patience and resilience. The challenges we faced were reminders of the effort required to rebuild trust, but they also highlighted our commitment to each other and our shared desire to create a stronger, more meaningful relationship. Months had passed since Laura's meeting with Tom, and we had both made significant strides in our journey of rebuilding trust. While there were still challenges, the progress we had made was undeniable. Our commitment to each other had deepened, and we were starting to envision a future together once more. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch enjoying a quiet moment together, Laura turned to me with a serious expression. "Dave, I've been thinking a lot about us lately. I know we've been making progress, but I want to be clear about where we stand and what our future looks like." Her words struck a chord with me. I had been reflecting on our relationship as well, and realized that I was at a crossroads. I needed to decide if I was ready to fully recommit to our relationship, or if it was time to move on. "I've been thinking about that too," I replied. "I see how hard you've been working and how much effort we've both put into this. I want to believe that we can build a new future together, but I need to know if we're both truly on the same page." Laura nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm committed to making this work. I know it won't be perfect, but I want to rebuild our life together. I'm willing to put in the effort and face any challenges that come our way." Her words were reassuring, and I felt a surge of hope. We had been through so much, and the idea of moving forward together was both daunting and exciting. I realized that despite the pain and setbacks, there was a strong foundation of love and commitment that we could build upon. We decided to recommit to each other and to our relationship. It was a conscious decision to embrace the future together, with the understanding that it would require ongoing effort and communication. We agreed to continue our therapy sessions, to maintain open and honest dialogue, and to prioritize our relationship. In the weeks that followed, we focused on strengthening our connection and creating new positive experiences. We celebrated milestones, such as anniversaries and personal achievements, and made an effort to show appreciation for each other daily. These gestures, while small, helped reinforce our bond and remind us of the reasons we had chosen to stay together. Recommitting to our relationship was a significant step, but it was also a testament to our resilience and dedication. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but about building a new future with a renewed sense of purpose and understanding. We knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were ready to face them together, with hope and determination guiding our way. As we moved forward from the decision to recommit, we began to experience a renewed sense of optimism. The commitment we made to each other was not just a promise, but a daily practice of effort and understanding. We were determined to create a future that reflected our growth and resilience. One of the key aspects of our renewed relationship was maintaining open and honest communication. We continued our therapy sessions, which provided a safe space to address any lingering issues and to celebrate our progress. These sessions helped us stay grounded and reminded us of the importance of addressing problems as they arose. We also made a point of setting goals for our future together. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, both individually and as a couple. We discussed plans for travel, career goals, and personal growth, and we were excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. Our efforts to reconnect and create new memories became an integral part of our journey. We took weekend trips, explored new hobbies, and made time for the small moments that brought us joy. These experiences helped us build a positive narrative for our relationship and reinforced the reasons we had chosen to stay together. Despite the challenges we had faced, there were moments of profound happiness and fulfillment. We found strength in our ability to overcome adversity and in the support we offered each other. The journey was far from perfect, but it was ours, and we were committed to making the most of it. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that the road to healing and rebuilding a relationship is never straightforward. It requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to face difficult emotions. However, it also offers the opportunity for growth, connection, and renewal. To anyone facing similar challenges, my advice would be to approach the situation with honesty and empathy. Rebuilding trust is a complex process, but it is possible with commitment from both partners. Don't be afraid to seek professional help and to take the time needed to work through the issues. Above all, remember that healing is a journey, not a destination, and each step forward is a testament to your strength and resilience. As Laura and I continued to navigate our journey, we did so with a renewed sense of hope and a deeper appreciation for each other. The challenges we had faced only served to strengthen our bond, and we were excited to embrace the future together, knowing that, despite the obstacles, we had emerged stronger and more connected than ever.